Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Coming to you from our digital desk, we want to talk about the Ohio Governor Mike DeWine's proposed budget, especially when it comes to schools and school funding. Now, there are some numbers that are shifting within the governor's budget when it comes to how much the state is going to provide. Now, schools have many different sources of funding. They get funding from the state, but they also pull a lot of their funding from property taxes in every community. The governor's office say they take issue with the word cuts when you look at the money that they have allocated. But it is more of a shifting. For example, the student population is shifting. You're having students leave public schools and enter either private schools or charter schools, and that means vouchers. Money follows those students, whether they go to a private school or a charter school. It follows them leaving a public school and into that private or charter school. So, according to the governor's office, and this is a statement from his staff, the changes reflect student population movement among the different types of schools. The guaranteed phase out prevents the dollar changes from being apples to apples. So part of this budget looks, and again, they take issue with the word cuts. Let's use the word shift maybe instead. Public schools will shift at least $100 million that looks like that will be going away. Instead, that money will be heading to the voucher system, the charter school system, where they're seeing a potential of an increase of $500 million. Every district will be impacted in different ways. For example, if we just take the Cleveland Metropolitan School District for the 2025-26 fiscal year, they will lose 0.5%. The next year, they will lose 1.1%. But we can look at a school district like Westlake that's growing in population, growing in size. Their state portion will go up 22.6% in the 25-26 school year, fiscal year, and then the year after that go up another 11.6%. The reason I bring up Westlake is we are welcoming in Ohio Representative Bride Rose Sweeney. She represents Westlake in District 16 for the Ohio House. Representative, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
This is an important topic. Nobody wants their school district to either be losing money or searching for money in different ways. When you look at this, and it is just a proposal here, what strikes you from the onset when we start looking at shifting dollars around?
Yeah, so I will differ with the governor. These are cuts, and that's how I'm viewing this. What we're seeing in this proposal is an overall decrease. If you look at all of our over 600 public schools in the state, and money going to the other options. The reality is that we have enough money at the state to fund all of the options. And I don't see a reason why we should be proposing a budget when we have the money to ensure that all the school districts can get what they need. What is being proposed is about 60% of all school districts will lose some dollar amounts. And when the state doesn't pay its fair share, it has to come from somewhere. And it's going to be asked of you, the viewers, people who will vote on property tax levies. And it's really important to note that Ohio is actually the most over-levied state in the nation already. And so when we have any even slight increases, some districts are seeing in the double-digit decreases. We are going to continue to shift that burden onto local property taxes. When the state doesn't pay its fair share, it is picked up by the local homeowners in that area. And that's what's most concerning to me.
I'm just going to be devil's advocate here. The governor's office is saying, well, wait a second, while we are shifting or taking money away from some districts, property values have exploded in the last 2-3 years all throughout the state. So schools are already bringing in more money from property taxes. So sort of this idea, if you think about wheelbarrows, if a wheelbarrow is bringing more money into that school from property taxes, why shouldn't the governor be allowed to take some wheelbarrow out, some money out of the wheelbarrow that comes in from the state?
So actually, because of a constitutional provision passed in the 70s, it actually stops the automatic increases to school districts when their home values rise. So it is not true that every single school district will see that money just because you're paying more in taxes. And so what is actually happening is the home values are artificially looking more wealthy. So when a district's home value increases, the state says we should give you less money. What my biggest problem with that is the state is not adjusting for inflation on our end. We are calculating it with these increased valuations. So we're saying you're more wealthy, but we aren't addressing for inflation. And so we are creating an imbalance. And so my big proposal is to start with what the governor introduced as a good starting point and adjust for inflation and the state paying for that. Because if we don't, we're going to shift that on to the local governments, because we are asking the locals to evaluate what it costs to educate a child today, but the state is using old data as to what our input should be.
And you talk about inflation, so think about any school district that has to go to voters. Well, yeah, their property may look like it's worth 10, 15% more than it was a few years ago, but they're also paying more, whether it's groceries, the gas, housing costs. There is a factor there of inflation over the last few years. That's money that's sitting in your house. You haven't realized that gain, but you're still paying out more for everything. Ohio Representative Bride Rose Sweeney, who represents District 16, that's the Westlake area. We're going to leave you with the final word here. This is just a proposal at this point. It does have to be approved or worked on by the House and the Senate. What's the timeline here, and how will you be voting, or how are you looking at this entire proposal?
So again, this is just a proposal and it's a good starting point. What I want the viewers to understand is that if the state doesn't pay its fair share, if we don't account for inflation on the portion that we are responsible for, it will come back to you as a decision whether or not to increase your property taxes, or whether or not your school district is going to face cuts or essential services being lost to our students. I personally think that's not fair. I can tell you, as the ranking member of the Finance Committee, that the state has the money to make sure that all school districts see a cost of or an inflation adjustment, and that you do have power. Call your state representatives. We're going through the budget proposal. We have to have a budget signed into law that's balanced by July 1st. The House, it's in our chamber at this moment. So I direct, if you're interested in this topic and are afraid of your property taxes going even further and you want to have quality schools, contact your state representatives and say you don't want to see cuts in your public schools, because we do have the money. What I fear that we lack at the moment is the political courage and willpower, and that's where the people come in.
Representative Sweeney, very well said. We appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us. We understand you're very busy down there in Columbus, so thank you for the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Again, just a conversation about there are so many aspects of the governor's budget that we've been covering over the last couple of weeks. This is just the latest one that we're getting into, and what could and couldn't happen to schools. But again, according to the governor's office, they don't like us using the word cuts, but they would rather us look at it as maybe a shifting and not funding what they call empty desks when schools are losing student population. If we have any other breaking news, it'll be right here on our digital platforms. Otherwise, look for our 3.5 hours of news and first alert weather. It has been a snowy day out there, to say the least, and the evening commute could be a little tricky. So make sure you tune in at 3 o'clock as we'll have our first alert weather situation. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media at Cleveland 19 News.